She asked me on an ordinary Tuesday. That's the part I remember most, that there was nothing special about the night at all. We were doing dishes. Or she was washing and I was drying, which was our system. The one we'd fallen into so naturally that neither of us could remember deciding on it. The radiator was ticking. There was some show playing in the other room that neither of us was really watching. And out of nowhere, not looking up from the pan she was scrubbing, she said, "Can I ask you something kind of personal?" Her name was Jules. We'd been roommates for a little over 2 years by then. And I want you to understand what kind of person she was, because it matters for what happened next. Jules was the sort of person who noticed things. She noticed when you'd had a bad day before you said a word. She noticed which mug you reached for when you were sad versus when you were fine. She wasn't nosy. She was just paying attention, always, in this quiet way that made you feel less alone in your own apartment. So when she asked if she could ask me something personal, I said yes, because I trusted her. And she said, "In 2 years, you've never once brought anyone home. No dates, no, nothing, and I'm not judging, I swear, I worry about you sometimes. You keep everybody at arm's length. Why is that? Why do you never let anyone in?" I stood there with a dish towel in my hand, and I felt the whole thing rise up in me at once. Because here's what she didn't know. Growing up, home was not a safe word for me. Home was where you learned to read the sound of a key in the door and know, from that alone, what kind of night it was going to be. Home was where you kept your own door closed and your voice down and your feelings smaller than they actually were. Because a home like that doesn't have room for a whole person. I learned very early that the walls you live inside are not automatically safe. That home is a word other people got to mean gently, and I didn't. So I did the thing you do. I stopped wanting one. I told myself I was just independent, private, low maintenance. I moved through a dozen apartments over the years and never let a single one of them matter. Never put anything on the walls. Never let a place or a person become something I couldn't stand to lose. Because you can't lose what you never let yourself have. That was the whole strategy. That was the armor. Don't bring anyone home, because home has never once been a place worth showing anyone. Jules was still looking at me, waiting. Her hands paused in the soapy water, and for the first time in my life I told the truth out loud. I told her all of it. The key in the door, the closed bedroom, the years of never letting a place matter. And then I said the part I'd never said to anyone. I said, "So it was never really about not letting people in. It's that I never had a home worth letting them into." And then somewhere in the last 2 years, I don't even know when it happened, you turned this into one. This is the first place in my entire life I've actually wanted to come back to at the end of the day. So you're asking why I never bring anyone home? I had to stop for a second. It's because I finally have one. And it's already you. She went quiet. Completely quiet. She set the pan down. She didn't say anything for what felt like a very long time, and I remember being terrified I'd said too much, that I'd handed her something too heavy to hold. But that wasn't it. When she finally looked up at me, her eyes were shining. And she just said, very softly, "I didn't know that's what I was to you." And I said, "How could you not?" We stood in that little kitchen with the radiator ticking, and something shifted between us that I don't have a clean word for. It wasn't dramatic. Nobody cried. Not really. But 2 years of me quietly, secretly, without even admitting it to myself, letting one person become the thing I'd spent my whole life pretending not to want. All of it was suddenly out in the open on an ordinary Tuesday over a sink full of dishes. I've thought a lot about why she went quiet instead of saying something back right away. And I think it's because she'd been carrying her own version of the same thing without knowing there was a name for it. She'd made this place a home for me on purpose, in 100 small, deliberate ways. And she'd never once been told that it landed, that she was somebody's safe place. Most people who make a home for others never get to hear it out loud. The noticing, the small kindnesses, the reading of the mugs, it usually just disappears into the air. And I'd handed it back to her, all at once. And she didn't have anywhere to put something that big except silence. Here's what I understand now that I didn't understand then. For most of my life, I thought home was a place. And I thought mine was broken, and so I thought I just wasn't the kind of person who got to have one. But home was never the walls. It was never the address. Home is the person you'd want to come back to. The one who makes a space safe enough that you can finally be a whole person inside it. And you can spend years living right next to that person, drying the dishes they wash, running on some quiet system the two of you never had to explain, and never once realized that the thing you gave up on wanting has been standing in your kitchen the whole time. So if you're listening to this and you've told yourself the same story I told myself, that you're just private, just independent, just not the kind of person who lets people in, I want you to be gentle with that. Because usually, it isn't coldness. Usually, it's a door somebody taught you to keep closed a long time ago. And I want you to look around at the people already in your life. The one who notices your bad days. The one who knows which mug means what. The one you've built some quiet little system with without ever deciding to. You might already be home. You just might not have said it out loud yet. Say it.